At this time, I would like to invite Chief of Staff Monica Drajewski and Courtney Thrash and her team from the Houston Education Research Consortium, HERC. They will present their research on demographic shifts in HISD. This work provides insight into how our district is evolving and what those changes mean for our students and for our families and our future planning. We appreciate their efforts in helping us better understand these trends and inform our decisions. After their presentation and questions, I will spend some time sharing an update on Earned Autonomy Framework. But right now, let us hear from HERC on the demographic shifts in HISD.
Hi. The presentation. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, hi, my name is Courtney Thrash. I'm a researcher at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research's Houston Education Research Consortium at Rice University. That's quite a mouthful, so we're commonly referred to as HERC. We are a research practice partnership. HISD is one of our 8 partners in the Houston region. Our research agenda is jointly developed with our district partners, and we like to say that we do research with our partners, not on them. All of our research is done at no cost to our district partners. The research study I'm going to talk about today started as a regional study looking at population change in the Houston region broadly. And it focused on the 68 districts that fall within the 10 counties in the Houston region. And that report and interactive dashboard was released yesterday. HISD asked us to take a closer look at what was happening within its district boundaries. And that led us to the following research question. How has the population living within Houston ISD's boundaries changed over time? So why is it important to think about population change? Changes in the population living within... Oh, sorry. Can you hear me better? All right. Changes in the population living within Houston ISD's boundaries can affect enrollment. And there's multiple ways that this can happen. There's children being born in the district, children moving in and out of the district, and then like the presence of other educational options like private schools, charter schools, homeschooling. And so the first two are some of the demographic processes that affect how many children live within the district and are therefore eligible for enrollment in the district. And so this is going to be the focus of our presentation today. So I have 4 key findings that I would like to talk about briefly. First, the total population living within HISD's boundaries has increased, but the school-aged population has remained very stable. The number of children born in the district has declined. There have been geographic shifts in the home language of children who live within the district. And there are now a lower proportion of children living below the poverty line than there were 10 years ago. Importantly, changes are not uniform across the district. So what's happening in one part of the district is not necessarily happening in other parts. So here we have a map showing total population change between 2013 and 2023. So you'll see variations of this map throughout the presentation. And we use high school attendance zones as our geographic unit of analysis, and we focus on the population living within those zones. So across, throughout the presentation, blues are going to represent kind of increases, oranges are going to represent decreases, and no color kind of represents stagnation or stable, and no real change. So in HISD, there's been a 6.9% increase in the total population between 2013 and 2023. That translates to about 96,000 residents. And we see kind of like a pattern. On the eastern side of the district, we see population stagnation or decline. In the western part of the district, we generally see population growth, obviously with some notable exceptions. So next we want to look at the students, the school-aged population, so those children aged 5 to 17. So here we have a map showing percent change in the population of school-aged children. In HISD, there has been a 1.4% increase in the population of school-aged children, which is about 3,000 additional children living in HISD. So while the number of residents in HISD, the total population has increased quite a bit, we haven't seen that same corresponding increase in the number of children. Additionally, total population change isn't always consistent with change in the school-aged population. So I want to give a couple of examples here. Wheatley High School is a zone where we are seeing that the population living within that zone is actually stable. So they haven't had big population change as far as total population. But we have seen that the number of children living in that zone has declined. Another example is Madison High School. This is a zone in which the total population is actually increasing. There are more people living there today than there were in 2013, but the population of children is declining. We can also look at the number of children being born in HISD. So between 2013 and 2023, there was a 9.4% decrease in births, which translates to about 2,000 fewer children being born every year in the district. Slightly over half the zones show declines in births. Majority of the others show kind of stability. And then there's only 2 high school zones where we're seeing more children born today than they were in 2013. And both of those are in and around the Heights. So what does all this mean? How do we think about all 3 of these components and what it means and how it can affect potential enrollment in the district? And so I picked a few zones just kind of randomly, and I'm going to show how we can put all of this information together and what it means for enrollment. I'm going to focus on 2 zones, but included in the appendix of the presentation that was provided, there is going to be this for every zone, high school zone in the district. So Austin High School, on the eastern side of the district, is declining on all 3 measures. So the total population living within Austin High School has declined. The percentage of children, or the population of children living within Austin High School has declined, and births are declining. So that means that there are fewer people in the district who could have children. There are currently fewer children in the district who would be eligible to attend school in HISD. And there are also fewer children being born who could potentially attend HISD, right, are eligible for enrollment. And so really what that means is that barring a change in any of these patterns, barring more kids being born, barring mobility into the zone, that is a zone that's going to see fewer and fewer children living within it that are eligible for enrollment. We can look at another example, Heights High School. This is a zone where we are seeing an increase in the total population, an increase in the student school-aged population, and an increase in births. And so once again, there's more people who are there who can have children, more children currently living there, and more children being born who could one day attend HISD. And so this is a zone that, barring major changes to those patterns, is going to see more children eligible to attend school in HISD. And like I said, for all of the other zones, these maps are provided for you. So we've looked at how the number of people living in the district and the number of children being born in the district has changed. But it's also just important to think about how the characteristics of the population has changed, because that has implications for the types of services that the students who show up in your schools might need. And so changing demographics as far as numbers might signal changing needs of students. And so we picked 2 characteristics to think about home language and poverty among children living in HISD's boundaries. So we have seen geographic changes in the home language of children living in HISD. For instance, in the upper northeast around North Forest, we've seen a decrease in the percentage of children speaking English and an increase in the percentage of children speaking Spanish. Conversely, in areas around the Heights, we have seen an increase in the percentage of children speaking English and a decline in the percentage of children speaking Spanish. And so these changes affect what kinds of services students showing up might need, right? So areas of the district where maybe historically English language services have not been heavily needed, there might be more of a need now. We've also seen a decline in the number of children living below the poverty in the district. But even though there's been the next slide got cut out, that's okay. Even though there's been a decline in poverty, 26% of children living within HISD's boundaries live below the poverty line. They're living below the poverty line in 2023, which is higher than many other large cities in the U.S. In 2026, the federal poverty line for a family of 4 was $33,000. So that is not a lot of money to live off of these days. In 2026, the federal poverty line for a family of 4 was $33,000. So 1 in 4 children are living in households that are making less than that. We also don't know if the decline in poverty will be sustained. So during COVID, there were some tax policies put into effect that did move the needle on child poverty, and we saw that nationally. And we don't know if, since those policies have elapsed, we don't know if there's going to be that sustained decrease in poverty moving forward. And importantly, overall population trends don't always align with who enrolls in HISD. So although we have seen a decline in overall poverty, for residents living within HISD, the number of HISD students who are economically disadvantaged has remained much higher. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. If you are interested in our regional briefing dashboard that was released yesterday, there's a QR code on the screen that will take you to that, and it includes district-specific information about HoustonISD and the 67 other school districts in the region. We look forward to continuing our work with HISD on this and other projects, and I am now going to pass over to Monica.
Before we move on, would you like to ask any questions? Mike's going to... Okay, good. Okay, great. Because I know there's some questions.
Okay, I want to begin by sharing my gratitude to the HERC team for the work and the partnership that we have with HERC. This holistic data is incredibly insightful and will continue to support our district's strategic decision making. And so when HERC shared this data with us a couple of weeks ago, we wanted to go ahead and layer on the locations of the school closures for school year 26-27. And as you can see on this slide, the data validates the internal demographic analysis that we conducted as part of the holistic data review that we did to make decisions on school closures. And so as you see on this slide, the majority of our closing campuses are in zones that have experienced a large decrease in births, while the remaining 4 campuses are in areas where we've seen a moderate decrease or have been stagnant as far as the number of students who have been born in those areas. And as you saw in the previous slides, these zones on the east side were kind of affected by all 3 components that Courtney shared with us. And so that is, of course, coupled with the aging facilities that we have. And so those were all the data points that we looked at when we made the decisions around the school closures. And so I just wanted to quickly speak to what is next as far as how we use demographic data like this as part of a comprehensive data review process. And so this robust demographic data will be incorporated into our annual strategic school review process. Demographic data, campus utilization data, enrollment, facility quality, and academic performance data are all critical inputs in the process that we use every single year to look at our campuses. These data points will continue to inform future school actions, such as consolidations and co-locations, strategic facility investments where we see zones where we're continuing to see an increase in the population, as well as very insightful for programmatic decision points, such as where to expand pre-K, what languages to offer, and potentially locations of sunrise centers based on where we see an increase in poverty rates. And so with that, I want to open it up to any questions that you have either for Courtney or myself about the data presented.
We'll start on this side.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the presentation. My question is on your slide that shows, I believe, a moderate increase in other languages spoken. I'm curious if there are any surprises about what those other languages are, or are they just an increase in the languages that are already spoken in that area?
I do not know exactly what languages, so sorry. I don't have that off the top of my head. The reason we had to group all the other languages is just for data, security concerns. So I don't know what exactly those languages. I imagine it's probably like the Vietnamese, is those kind of common languages, but I don't know off the top of my head. I apologize.
Thank you. And Chief of Staff, my question to you is, as a district, how do we accommodate those other languages? As a board, what factors or levers might we consider that you would need to use to accommodate those other languages that students might be bringing and that they need to be successful in school?
Great question. I'd likely defer to the superintendent or deputy superintendent Hull as far as the academic adjustments, but we provide differentiation and scaffolds for students. You know, across the district, we have students who speak a number of different languages, so I'll let the superintendent speak a little bit more to those specifics around the language supports that we provide.
Yes, and then, you know, we have a number of ESL teachers, English as a second language interventionists, and so depending on the type of school and the number of students, you'll see that sort of programming. And I think we haven't yet used translation as much as we probably will in the future, but that's another way we'll be addressing those languages. Anything else, Kristen? That's about it.
And we look at when we make staffing decisions around the ELD, the language interventionists, we look at the number of students who are coded as English as a second language so that we can ensure that the staffing ratio is appropriate based on where we see the increase in students with different home languages.
So just so I understand the methodology, this is a 10-year review?
Yes, yes, we used, for the population estimates, we used American Community Survey, so those are conducted between the decennial census. And then we also used birth data from the Texas Center for Health Statistics. And we looked, yes, at from 2013 to 2023. And that was because at the time that we were getting data, the 2024 release of the ACS had not happened yet. So that was the most recent data we could get.
Okay, great. And so we obviously look at data at a much more frequent cadence within, you know, our district. Can you tell us a little bit about what our internal methodology is because we're so nimble and we think about this stuff every year, and you know, maybe you can provide some context as to what our methodology is for how we review this, because this is almost like a belt and suspenders approach. It's confirming a lot of things that our internal analysis brought to light.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that and how you're thinking about, you know, our methodologies going forward and just from a practical measuring standpoint.
Sure. We have a full-time demographer on staff at HoustonISD who we've been partnering with very closely. She runs our projections data that we use to inform our staffing decisions, our budgeting decisions, and so she looks over 5 years and makes strategic decision points based on all the inputs that she has. She can be more specific than I can, but we have an internal demographer who does this professionally, because to your point, we can't wait for when these studies come out. We have to continue to do it, but it's helpful to have these studies come out and validate the internal projections that we're doing.
The other thing, and this happens every year and actually all year long, we look closely at the enrollment projection, the actual enrollment, either increase or decrease, and then we also have a breakdown of the demographics of the students, Hispanic, African American, white populations in each school, and how many kids are attending, how many have enrolled this year versus last year. And we do that actually every time I go to school. I get a printout over the last 4 years of the numbers and the types of students who are enrolled in that school, and that we roll up all the time. And the executive directors pay attention to that, the chiefs of schools. And so even right now, because we're doing budgeting and the schools have their budgets, we had to give them an enrollment projection, and that's based on the demographers, yes, and the trend that school has seen over the last 5 years.
Well, I just will follow up. I celebrate that you know, intense focus around these demographics, because I think one of the wonderful parts about being in Texas is that a lot of people want to come into the great state of Texas. The downside or the challenging part is that things are, you know, quite volatile in terms of specific neighborhoods and specific streets and specific school communities. So I really appreciate that the team is staying on top of that and watching it closely, because things can move, and we want to be as supportive as we can to the school as it sits on any given year.
I just had one question. I understood you talked about maybe we have people moving in but not school-age children. I'm wondering about the people moving in, I'm assuming that these are young people moving in to the loop and it's expensive. That's what I'm assuming. Do we have data on, like, yeah, maybe they don't have kids yet, but we're talking about 30-year-olds moving in? Is that, I'm just saying that from what I'm seeing, but am I on track with that? Did y'all look at that? Is it that we're just not there yet, and in 10 years it'll look different because they'll have children, or do we not know?
Yeah, we don't know exactly. So yeah, I do think rising housing prices and just cost of living is driving some of this. I think it's even driving some of this mobility, what we see in home language of children. So there is a possibility that it is young professionals moving in who don't have children yet. But we also know that young professionals generally have lower birth rates, right? They have fewer children. So I think it remains to be seen what that is. And there's ways to estimate it, but obviously until it happens, we don't know for sure. But yeah, that is a possibility in some of the regions of the district. I'm thinking especially like East Downtown and things like that.
I think my question might be more for the soup, and I'm not sure how to quite answer this. Maybe from a project manager standpoint, this is a lot of data, and you're telling us we do our own data, right? So it all gets kind of mixed together, which is important. From a big picture perspective, when we get all this data, who in our district starts delegating everything, right? So much. Okay, you get this, you get special ed information, you get this. Is there one person within the administration that just looks at it as a whole and then says, this is in your area, this is in your area, so to bring it back together so that we can know what to do with it? Does that make sense?
Yes. There is no one person. It depends on the function. So, for example, we mentioned demographer. Right now we have to make budget estimates, and we have to estimate what is our possible enrollment decline. So that, in that case, the demographer is working with finance, and they have a small team that says, this is what the enrollment projection is. And part of it's looking at research, like the HERC research, and part of it's looking at enrollment declines. Last year, for example, our demographer did really well, except for the possible impact of the immigration policies. Other than that, the information was really good. For possible movement forward on future school closures, or whether or not we need to ensure that we put a modular somewhere because of enrollment increase. Chief of Staff and the data team, Rachel Rucker and that group, are looking closely at that data, and I've assigned them that so that we don't invest a lot of resources facility-wise in schools that might close 2 years from now. And we can also suggest to the board reasonably what should be next on the list or what shouldn't be, even with the medium FCI. So FCI is also connected closely with this data, and so Alicia Jolivet and that crew is looking at that data. So there's no one orchestrator of this, but almost every department uses the data. And we have a good dashboard with all of this data that's available to all the chiefs.
And if I can just add for this particular study, like the superintendent mentioned, my central data and impact team, they have already convened a group of internal stakeholders who we believe all have a role to play in this, right? Even when we think about recruiting students back into the district, when we think about pre-K expansion, and so she has already convened that group and shared this data with them so that they can begin to incorporate it in their work as well.
I have a quick question. Would you put up the Austin High School slide?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So on this slide, not great. The data is not great from an enrollment perspective. When you look at 10 years of population decrease, 10 years of children population decrease, and then births decreasing, the simple math is that over a long period of time, the customers, young children, have been disappearing, right? Because they're either not in the district, they're They're not being born. And so the only thing that can happen to a school that faces this kind of demographic shift is the loss of enrollment. Correct? That's the math. And as Good Reason Houston put out just in the last couple of months, a chart that showed, and it showed all districts in Houston, and that same demographic shifting is causing lower enrollment across the Houston area. Now, the interesting part is the Census Bureau just came out with their 2024, 2025 numbers that came out, and they do it through June 30 of every year. And Houston was one of the cities we added 124,000 people. The people, however, were in the north part, Montgomery County, and Fort Bend. So that Harris County did actually add people, but the central city, and especially the east side, has been having population issues and children issues for a long time. This is not new. So the Good Reason Houston study just showed that this trend is not the friend of enrollment, and ultimately all schools, especially urban schools, are going to be facing this issue for a long period of time. The other equation that's out there is that people, if you look at 20 years ago, people got married in their 20s, now they get married in their 30s. And if you think about first children, they used to have first children in their mid-20s, now it's into the 30s. And so you have this longer term issue about people having fewer children and having the children later in life. So this trend is not going to turn around anytime soon, and we need to be prepared for it. And I think it's really important to get data internally and to partner with the Kinder Institute. We really appreciate that partnership, and with these other entities, because at the end of the day, the revenue stream for all urban schools is going down. And we're going to have to figure out a way to use our resources in a way that maximizes the utility of what we have for the students that remain. And that's going to be an existential problem for every urban school district going forward for the foreseeable future.
Can I add something, sir? So one of the things, we mentioned a little bit about poverty and economics, but we've asked her to look a little bit more closely at the economic factors, whether it's rising housing costs, the availability of affordable housing, that sort of thing, because that also impacts enrollment. You just have to look at, like the Good Reason Houston report showed that Aldine and Pasadena had a higher enrollment decline, more kids left Aldine and Pasadena percentage-wise than Houston. And that probably has something to do with economics, not just demographics. And so that would be another interesting area to pursue, because I think that also will have a long-term impact on parts of our community.
Yes, yeah, we are pulling some of those measures to try to look at just change in housing prices, median income, things of that nature. I will say, generally across every single zone, there's been increasing the housing prices. We're also planning to look at kind of charter school locations. I mean, in the eastern part of the district, there's been a proliferation of charter schools in the past few decades. So we're also looking at that and how that may impact enrollment, because while we have seen a decline in the population, there's still thousands of students in these areas that need to be served.
Can I just real quick see this slide on Heights High School? Yeah, thank you. I'm good.
We'll be sure the board has access to we have this slide for all the zones, so we'll make sure that you all have that. It's in the appendix.
Did that spur any other questions? Okay, great. Well, let's move on. Thank you so much for the data. We really appreciate partnering with the Kinder Institute. Thank you.
All right, Mr. President, members of the board, I would like to spend just a few minutes talking about earned autonomy framework. So Just quick history. 3 years ago, when the administration came in and the Board of Managers took over, we had a problem. We had 274 autonomous schools. 121 of them were DNFs. So clearly, we had a problem, and the problem that we were trying to solve is on the board as you see it, and that is how to allow for some flexibility and innovation at high-performing campuses, because it was a tale of two districts, while significantly improving low-performing schools and maintaining rigorous expectations for all in one system. And the bottom line is, the top line only, you don't have to read the rest of the screen if you don't want, but schools that have high performance should have more autonomy, and yet that autonomy should be earned. And coming into a system with 274 schools, we didn't know who really had earned it. Yes, there were some high-performing campuses. Some of them had high achievement gaps. Some had higher populations of students who were already proficient. So who has really earned the autonomy in instructional expectations? So we didn't have earned autonomy, we had defined autonomy. And you see the list here. This is the system that we put in place towards the end of the first year, you may recall. In the spring, this was rolled out, and then this is currently the system we have, and we're moving to an earned autonomy framework now that we've had 3 years of data and instructional focus. We can move forward. So just again, but for context, the thing about the defined autonomy, people had autonomy in certain things. For example, if you were an A or B rated school or an SUS school, you could pick your curriculum. You could use any curriculum, but the district wouldn't pay for it. The district would pay for 3 selected or vetted curricula if you chose one of those. NES schools had no autonomy around curriculum, and they used the HISD curriculum. But hardly anybody had autonomy over instruction, and that was one of the pain points in the district and communities around little autonomy over instruction. In other words, everybody used a teacher evaluation system, the same one. Everybody had the principal evaluation system. Everybody had spot observations and things like that. Instruction was not autonomous. So what we would like to do, and moving towards, is to have autonomy levels based on not just 1 year of accountability, which we did in the first year, so over 3 years of accountability data. SUS and NES are not automatically given the highest level of autonomy or the lowest level of autonomy. Autonomy levels at the time did not differentiate over an evaluation system, and it did not incorporate achievement gaps. So we want to change that. So autonomy will be based now on multi-year academic performance. Eligibility is based on TEA accountability ratings and achievement gaps. Instructional authority and decision-making is earned. And if the board approves, this is the area where if the board doesn't approve, they'll have level 3 autonomy. Level 4 and 5 will have more autonomy, but only if the board approves an 1882 partnership. Level 3, 2, and 1 operate within the current defined autonomy system, but level 3 has more autonomy than level 1. So here are the new 5 levels of autonomy. The board has already entertained level 5 for 4 of the schools. And any futures will also, the board will either approve or not approve any future level 5 schools, which is full autonomy. We'll talk about that in a minute. Level 4 is similar to level 5 because instead of 4 consecutive A ratings, they have in 4 years 3 A's and 1 B. So they've earned a level of autonomy because we feel pretty certain that they will maintain that. And all of these come with lower than average achievement gaps. Level 3 is what you would think right now the highest level of autonomy is today. And then level 2 for high C rated schools. And level 1 is for NES and special focus schools. So again, level 5 and 4, only if approved by Board of Managers. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. At any school with four A's, this year was only high schools. In the future, we'll open it up to middle. And then, again, if this is a board decision for 1882, so the board decision for level 5 and 4. And then eventually we will open it up to elementary as well. But it's good to call out that this year was only high schools were eligible. And want to be clear on a couple things. There's little autonomy for schools that don't do well academically for kids. And so if a campus receives an F rating at the end of the 25-26 school year, we think that would not likely to happen, but if they do, they will automatically become an NES campus. And if a campus receives a D rating at the end of 25-26, they will automatically become a special focus campus. So we have a goal of only A and B schools, and students should not have to go to a D or an F-rated school. And really, we're trying to make it so that no child will go to a C-rated campus. These are the eligibility that you have this document, so I'm not going to read it, but it shows you the eligibility for these different levels. Level 4 and 5, again, the biggest thing is about the accountability rating 4 years in a row, or out of 4 years, only 1 B, and the rest A's. You can see there's also an achievement gap. We know we need to narrow that, so part of the performance contract that you signed with the 4 was that they had to bring down, decrease their achievement gap by 5 percentage points in just 5 years. So even though 25 gives you eligibility, and almost all of them had a lot lower than 25, they still have to decrease it by 5 percentage points. Level 3, you can see there, most of our schools will be level 3 if they're not NES, because they're A or B rated. We have 197 A and B rated schools today. We'll have more than that, hopefully. Pretty sure by the end of the STAR period, which just started, by the way, today. Again, I won't read this, but just shows you that each level has several autonomies outlined pretty clearly in the document called Earned Autonomy Framework. Level 4 and level 5 have almost full autonomy, and it's the autonomy granted in the performance contract that you signed with the level 5 schools, which is full autonomy, even to the point where they have their own evaluation system that they want, their own instructional program, their own spot observations, salary schedule, all of that. So there's several areas, and these are not much different than the ones we had in the defined autonomy document. The biggest difference between level 2 and level 1 is if you're level 2, so you're a C-rated school, we will probably insist on a couple things that you would not have autonomy over. For example, you're C-rated, or you have a huge achievement gap, your gap is 40%, then you must have 90 minutes of math and 90 minutes of ELA in your schedule. And you can design your schedule the way you want, but there better be 90 minutes of math and 90 minutes of ELA in your schedule. We will also probably, we will review your curriculum. If we don't think it's strong enough and tied to the Texas standards, then we will insist on the HISD curriculum. So every school will be specific like that, and so you will lose a little bit of autonomy in that way. We still, despite the earned autonomy or defined autonomy framework, we're still really keen in on, or hone in on special education and minority achievement gap. And so all schools have to do work on special ed compliance and minority achievement gap, as you see on the screen. The level 5 will do it their way, but that is something that we wrote into their performance contract on SPED compliance and minority achievement gap. I know that was fast, but you have the document. I'm prepared to answer any questions.
Superintendent Miles, I like the framework. It's great. I love how clear this presentation went. It's very helpful. If you're a parent and you are in a school or a B school or C school, how should you interpret this information?
Well, I think for parents, the way you should interpret it is if you're an A or B, you have a lot more autonomy than the rest of the district, especially if you're level 5 or 4. So if you're A for several years. But if you're normal A and B, like you had 2 years of an A and 2 years of B, that's really good, and you have a fair amount of autonomy. However, you are still part of the teacher eval system and the principal eval system. For your child, I know we talk about these frameworks. For student experience, they're not going to experience much different. Even if a school loses some autonomy, that teacher-student interaction is still going to be strong and tight. It just might be more math, more language arts, and a slightly different curriculum.
And so the plan is to roll this out for the 26-27 school year?
Yes, sir. So we are waiting for the accountability results to come out.
And that'll be August?
The initial ones, what they call the first preliminary, is going to be in June.
Okay.
The second preliminary is usually in sometime in July, and then the third and final will be in August. So we'll base a lot of this on our initial preliminary in June, towards the end of June, and if we have to make adjustments, we will.
And so, you're talking about level 4 is also going to be in, so we wouldn't have any of those next year.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so
We
there will
are
be no
done
more
with the level 5 for this year and level 4 for this year. So.
And so there will be the 4 that we've already approved. Everybody else, even if they're high performers, they're going to be basically in that third and level 3 of earned autonomy.
That's correct. And part of that is because, one, only the board can approve that, and so we wouldn't be able to approve it in August and then put things in place for that school year. So it is a little bit of a delay, but it is a little bit of a delay.
And so I guess really what it boils down to is there will be the 4 autonomous schools, and then now we've got 3 levels.
Yes, and if you notice, again, the level 3 is what level 4 is today. So level 3 is really what the highest autonomy schools are having today, not counting level 5. Is level 4. Level 3 is the same as that.
How does NAS PUA overlay this or underlay this, whichever way you want to think about it?
So NAS has very little autonomy. They always have had little autonomy. They are level 1. The only PUA schools that are level 1 are the ones that would either be a D or an F campus or a special focus school. So I don't know how many special focus schools we'll have. It depends on if they have a D or low C, or if the trend line is like they went from 90 to 80 to 70 in 3 years. So there'll be a small number of PUA schools that are special focus.
Go ahead.
Follow up on the last question. So if an NES campus over 4 years got A's and lowered the achievement gap, how does that fit into this equation?
Yes, so in the earned autonomy framework, If an NES school has 3 accountability ratings in a row, that's an A, starting with this year, they're allowed to ask to apply to leave the NES orbit and become a PUA school. And it will not be unreasonably denied. I always say this as an asterisk. I think it's going to be rare that an NES school, even with 3 A's, would apply to leave the NES orbit because the salaries are higher, they get teacher apprentices, they get learning coaches, and we'll see. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I suspect I won't be. We have special focus schools today that are no longer going to be special focus schools, we believe, who are asking for learning coaches and teacher apprentices. We also have special focus schools that want to be NES because they don't want to lose the salaries that are not the salaries, but the apprentices and learning coaches, and they want the salaries of NES.
I have a few more questions. So 1882 was created for low-performing schools and for innovation. And I understand with the 1882s that we did, those 4 schools were clearly innovative, long history of specialization. But now we're saying the criteria is just achievement scores and the achievement gap. And I don't see how that's predictive of a campus proving that they can innovate and can handle all that burden. So how are you thinking about that? Because those seem like 2 different definitions.
Yeah, so there's one is an eligibility, and the other is what is approved through an application. Remember that the 1882 partners, level 5 and future level 4, have to apply. And in that application, they have to show and prove to the board and the TEA, otherwise TEA won't grant 1882 rights. They have to prove that they have either the ability to turn around a school on the one side or to innovate on the other. So you see that in the programs that we brought to you, yes, they were eligible, but they still had to pass the application process. They had to get by you, and then they also had to get by TEA. And in our applications, for example, Energize would talk about how they would offer greater programming because they have a little bit more money, expand some programs, and things like that. So that's what would happen.
But then that application is you're looking at that application. So the board aspect of us, we haven't seen any assessment for innovation, and we don't have any criteria for innovation at this point, correct?
That's right. And look, as part of the process, we could, what happens is that if the board approves the contract, that contract would not even have started without the application process going forward. So maybe the remedy that we also showed you the application. But we attest to the fact that they passed an application that has to go to TEA.
Well, to your point, ultimately the board has to approve it. So if we want to set a criteria that says it has to be innovation or turnaround, then we can do that. And then in addition, the TEA has to approve that as well. So they have another level of authority and level of rigor that they apply to it as well. Right.
That's right.
For sure. That's the way I would see it working.
Okay, I still got more questions. So we've got this new goal of all AB campuses. And so if we meet our goal, then virtually everyone, not everyone, but virtually the district, this is available to everyone. And so I'm trying to think long term about this and what we're saying, because we're taking 4 and 5 and wrapping it in 1882. So conceivably, 80%, 90% of the district could apply. So then a board would have to manage innumerable other boards. And so I don't see how that's setting us up for success. Like the success of success, which we want all students to learn. If we're wrapping it up in this in-district 1882, where does it stop? And we now then created a monster that a board cannot manage, and we want to set the board up for success. And what are the parameters around size? Because we are now making a virtual decision that then says we're fundamentally changing what our district is and what it means. And so I want to make sure that we're all super clear of the down the line ramifications. So can you talk about your bigger goal of, if we meet everything and we are all 8 campuses, how are you envisioning this district and what that means and how anybody could manage all that?
I can. Context first. There's such a thing as a portfolio model, and this district actually had that. That's where 274 schools were autonomous. The difference was it wasn't earned, and every school was doing their own thing. No, you didn't have 274 individual boards, but you had 274 schools doing their own thing. The different curriculum, the different class schedules. Some few things that were the same because of transportation, but there was great variability in what they were doing.
And I appreciate that you have put us in the right direction. I want to make sure we don't create something that creates the very same problem.
That's right. Let me answer that then. But I wanted to give you the context because there was a monster, and it was unearned autonomy, and now we have put some parameters. The reason why there's only 4 out of 274 schools level 5 autonomy is because we're very conscious of the fact that we need to do this slowly, and there may have to be a cap on the number of schools. So that's why we started with 4. I messaged some other at another meeting that we probably would add only a handful more next year, and maybe a handful of level 4 if the board approves. And I think the board is in control of the accelerator, whether we do more or whether we do less. I do think that if you get to 200 and some autonomous schools with their own board, that would be unwieldy and unwise. Just logistically, we still are one district, and we still have kids who come to us who are either underserved, challenged by poverty, challenged by language barrier. We have an unknown future coming with workforce and workplace. So it would behoove the board and the administration to go slow, especially around these 1882 partners.
So can I ask you, though, your real in-game vision? Because go slow towards what? Like, what are you seeing as the right fit? Because we're talking about structural changes to the district, and I want to make sure we're clear about our work versus the staff work on that.
Okay, so we're diverting from the broader picture here, and
I don't think we are.
Oh, I think we are. This is not a debate about 1882s right now.
I promise I'm not debating. I just want to be clear. I promise I'm not debating. I really would like questions answered.
Your question, though, is what is your future vision of 1882 and HISD?
No, sir, that's not my question.
Okay,
my question is, you've got a framework for a series of schools and how we can innovate, how we can have the best outcome for kids, and how we can capitalize on funds to do that. I understand that. I would like to know, because you're envisioning this, you're saying, well, maybe, so you said you agree that it wouldn't work if everyone is this way. This is your plan you're envisioning. So I'm saying, in your best estimation of what would work best for our district based on your leadership now and what you're envisioning for other people in the future, how are you seeing this? Because I want to make sure we have the right framework for the beginning. So what are you saying this would look like?
Yeah, so, part of that will be, part of that will be informed by how this process rolls out. I'm optimistic that the 4 level 5 schools that the board approved is going to work well. We know that we have to work out some bugs because this is a new thing for the district. There's still education that has to be done for 1882. What's the difference between that and how much autonomy I have? I'm not a charter school. I'm an 1882. So even though we move faster, we also move in a way that is informed by practice. So, long story short, I don't know what the optimal number is. I will know and you will know in the next couple of years what logistically can be done and what the negative consequences are. If if it turns out that the 1882s decrease access and equity, then maybe we want to slow down even more. Maybe we want to stop. But I don't know that to be sure. My assumption is that it won't. My assumption is that it will be good for kids, especially in those schools, and that means it'll be good for the district as a whole. And once we get an inkling that it's not, then it's time to put on the brakes. But again, you're in control of the accelerator. I can propose all I want. But
And I
you're in
appreciate your
control of the
answer.
accelerator.
Understand, I'm literally asking the question because these are important questions, and I do want to know how you're envisioning this. Thank you.
Great, thanks. There'll be a lot more discussion about this issue in the future for sure. Anybody else? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Went dark.
I know.
Okay.